Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. I'm the Mood Read Queen, and I come to you today a little defeated. So it's September 30th, so we still have one more day when I'm filming this left in September, but I've just decided that, I'm not gonna read anymore. I mean, I don't think I'll finish a book in the next day that I can magically add to this list. So I thought I'd talk about the books I read this month. Less than the last 2 months for sure. And then we'll kind of break down my thoughts on it, and do I feel good about it? No. But also, life happened. So this month, I read 7 books. It was the first month being back in school. The first full month, because when I did my August wrap up, we'd only been in school for about a week and a half. So a lot of those books were read before school started. Yeah. And September was a rough month. A little bit of a life rant. So I am in 2 grad classes right now. And I was originally only supposed to be in 1, and then I was going to work on my thesis. I'm doing my master's in English with an emphasis in literature. So, exciting. I'm excited about it. I'll be hopefully graduating in May. Maybe at the end of the summer, we'll kind of see how it pans out. But in my grand scheme, I had decided that I was going to take 1 3-hour class, and then you can split your thesis up into 2 semesters if you wanted to, like 3 hours and then 3 hours. And so I thought, okay, I'll only have 1 class on campus. I can work on my thesis. And then next semester, there was a class I was interested in. And then also work on my thesis. Things did not go according to plan. Thesis is going to happen all 6 hours next semester. And so it was like 2-3 days before school started. And I had to enroll in a second class. And grad school is night classes, And it has been soul-sucking is a word. It's not good. And so the 1 class I had enrolled in initially is I've talked about it a little bit before, but it's about it's British literature after 1798, which is already not my vibe. And the topic is 19th century democracy, which I did not know when I signed up for it. So we have all this philosophy and political language, and it's just right over my head. And I'm also just not operating at 100% with the classes that I'm teaching. And anyway, it's been rough. And so I've been having trouble just reading those books, let alone books for fun. So I'm in kind of a weird spot. This has happened before. It's not anything new, but I feel like I never recovered from listening to all of the wonderful audiobooks I listened to in June and July. I listened to 12 audiobooks in a month, and that was just, I think I read additional 12 books on top of that. So that was the month I read 24, and that was my first wrap up. And I read maybe 11 or 12 last month. And this month is 7. So it's not terrible. I mean, I've definitely done worse before. But I haven't been there mentally. It's been a struggle to even just pay attention to audiobooks. So I'm hoping to get back in my groove. I've just been spending time reading stuff that, I haven't read all of it, so I don't count it. Or, I'm still reading some webtoons, but those aren't done enough yet. And I'll let myself count those eventually. So it's just been an interesting time. I'm hoping to make some headway on some books this weekend, but I thought what I would do is, after my little spiel there, we're going to go through the books I read this month, because I was in the middle of 1 book at the end of last month. So we're going to go through the books I read and just talk about them. I'm hopefully will get this done in maybe half an hour. It'll be a shorter one, which will be nice because the last one was over an hour or almost an hour, and then the other one was like an hour and 15 minutes. So it'll be nice to hopefully get this done faster and I can talk in a little more depth about some of the books. Some of them I don't have much to say, but some of them I do. And then, yeah, because I read some great books this month. I also read some that were like, whatever. I did not get to my whole TBR, clearly, but I got to a decent amount. Like, I feel like I kept to my TBR fairly well. And I don't know if I'm struggling because I am working 2 jobs and doing this and, going to grad school and doing clubs at school. And, I don't know if it's for that purpose, which that would be a good reason, or if the books I'm picking aren't like just gelling. I think it's the first one, but I've had a hard time getting into books since July, so I don't know. So here we go. I never know which way to turn this guy. Let's go this way this time. So the first book I finished in September is Zenny. I think it's pronounced Zenny, by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This book, okay? I read this book initially because I put it on my list back in maybe April, May, probably April. I actually found BookTube because I wanted to read more books with plus size, like main characters, or like main characters who had body sizes that I could relate to. And I ended up on YouTube for that. And I ended up watching several videos from several different creators, some of whom I watch on a regular basis now, and some of them I don't. And this book was brought up quite a bit. And in my research for when I was building my August Life on the Edge TBR that I did with Talk About Swoon, Amanda on Instagram, and I've barely been on Instagram recently, so I don't even know what's going on most of the time there. The last month has been rough, so bad. It's not been good. Anywho, I saw that this was like in a series called Loose Ends, but this was number 2 and not number 1. So I talked about Wraith, I believe, which is the first book. Let me make sure. Yeah. Which is the first book. And Wraith was fine, but it wasn't anything special. But Zenny, I understand why everyone loves it so much. I put it on my Life on the Edge TBR because I knew it had, there was a box for that month on my bingo board that was sex toys, and I knew there was pegging in this book. And I found that fascinating. I've like dipped in my toe in that pool reading wise, but not to the extent that it's in this book, I think. And so I was excited about it. And honestly, this book, I gave it 5 stars. I don't even think I left a review because I was so tired. Like, that's how tired I've been. I haven't been reviewing anything. I left a rating, but I didn't review it. This book felt like a Brown Sisters book. It reminded me in the best ways of the things I loved about those books by, oh my gosh. What? Talia Hibbert. Oh my gosh. Talia Hibbert. I didn't love the second book. Danny's book. Danny's book, I talk about that in the previous wrap up, but wasn't my fave. But I fell in love with Chloe and Red and her book, and then Jacob and Eve and Eve's book. And this felt like a soul sister to those books. And like there's even like an aunt type mother character who feels very similar to Gigi. There's like music as like a background of family kind of interest. What did I love about this book? First of all, there was pegging, which I never thought that it's fascinating, the things that you find interesting after a while. I thought that was it was so interestingly done because you have Zinni and then you have, what in the heck is his name? Mason. Oh, Mason automatically went on my list of like men who have ruined me for like other men in real life. Loved him. and they're both bisexual. And so the book, just a little bit of a summary here, Zinni's aunt dies and leaves her all this money. And she goes to, settle her estate and finds out about this money. And she also finds out that her aunt is leaving $100,000 to this guy named Mason McEnroy. And Mason is like this mid-30s ginger, I think he's ginger, Scotsman? Is he from Scotland? Yeah. Yeah. And he's like he's not a little dude. He's not a little dude. And they meet because he was friends with her aunt. But when she goes to go all through all these legal proceedings, she finds out that actually her aunt was her biological mother. And so that is why she has inherited so much more than her other cousins. And Mason was a good friend of her aunt's for the last several years. And he has debt to his father that you learn about in the book, why he has this debt. And so she left the money to him. And in order for, I believe, both of them, to get their inheritance, they have to get married. And it says a marriage of inconvenience, because her aunt wanted both of them to be happy and thought that they would be good together. And Zinni sort of sworn herself off men. She's had not great experiences. And Mason doesn't feel like he's in a spot in his life where he can offer much to anybody. Which I honestly, I'm not in my mid-30s yet, but I can imagine feeling like that, honestly. Just because, you think, you get to a certain age and you think, I'm going to have it more together, No, I'm 31. I just had the month anniversary of my 31st birthday. And I have less figured out than I literally ever thought I'd have figured out. Talk to me 3-4 years ago. That Megan, super confident in her life and in the choices she was making, and in general feeling comfortable. I had the world figured out. And I don't anymore. I feel very unprepared, honestly, for the world. And it's interesting that Mason feels that way too. I really related to that. But Zinni and Mason, they have a conversation. They're both attracted to each other. And they're both like, you know what? We have to stay married for a month, but we get our inheritance. So why not? Why not? And she's only going to be there for a couple weeks before she has to go back. She's a teacher. I never see teachers portrayed accurately in books, which is something that frustrates me. I'm sure there's a book out there that does it well. I know Olivia Dade has some books. And Zinni, the book, it does it fine. I mean, she's an elementary teacher, but also she's gone at the beginning of the school year for a couple weeks. I don't know. And she's not even sure that's what she wants to do. It's a private school. So I could give it some leeway because private and public, obviously two very different things. But she's gone and they're going to be, she'll be there for a few weeks in East Coast. I can't remember where now. I think it's New York. It's New York somewhere. And then she's going to go and they'll still be married. And then, of course, they'll, send divorce papers or whatever. And they're not going to do anything, not going to really acknowledge that they have an interest in the other person, and they just have to. And they start a physical relationship, but pretty quickly it becomes more than that. They're able to talk to each other about things, and he's able to share about his past. He dated, he used to be in a band, and he works on a farm with his cousin, who was also from Scotland, right? I think so. I can't remember now. His mom's from Cleveland and his dad's from Scotland, and he grew up in Scotland. So he has dual citizenship, I think. And I think his cousin is also from Scotland, and he has a restaurant thing that he works at, and there's also a farm, and there's a cannery or whatever. I might have made that word up. And actually, some of the side characters, I was like, ooh, do they have their own books, Rebecca? Do you want to write that one? Or maybe she already did and I just didn't know it. But he's able to open up about he was in a relationship with this guy who he was in a band with, and his dad found out and like forced them to break up. It wasn't good. His dad is like, you know, really like homophobic or whatever, even though he's, you know, he's bisexual. And then he ends up kind of getting match-made with this girl whose dad owns a company or something, kind of business partners with his dad. And he's open with her and they talk about, you know, like he doesn't dislike her. And they're supposed to be getting married. She knows about, you know, his previous relationships. She must have told someone, not felt comfortable with it or whatever. And she cancels the wedding. And Mason's father, who paid for the wedding. Did he pay for the wedding? I don't know. It was some sort of like bribery to this other guy. Anyway, Mason owes his father money. And so they're able to be open about that, as well as so many other things. And honestly, I listened to the audiobook of this. I highly recommend the audiobook. The guy who does Mason's voice is fantastic. He reads the whole thing, but he does switch back and forth between like his Scottish accent and like his American one for her. And there are a few scenes that were kind of a little cringe but I mean, he's like, I understand that he wouldn't be the best at doing like, you know, an early 30s, like young black woman. Like, you know, just like the girl who did the narration in Rafe, I believe, because in Rafe you have like the tall ginger nanny who's super buff, and then you've got this young, successful black surgeon. And she did the voice. I wasn't the same girl, same narrator, but the girl read for him and like really struggled with it. And so like, you know that some narrators try too hard on differentiating between like male and female characters, especially. And in Rafe, that was definitely the case. It wasn't really the case in Cindy, but there were a couple scenes where you were like, ooh, that's okay. That could have been better. But honestly, it was so good. And what I loved about it is I believed their connection, even though it had been a short amount of time. And I also appreciated that there wasn't a huge, gigantic third act breakup. And you could understand why it took them a while to figure it out. Like once they realized they actually had feelings for each other and they were falling for each other, what do they do? Because they both didn't think they had it in them to have a relationship. And the only reason they were willing to pursue that. What? Did you hear that? Alexa, turn off the reminder. Oh my God. I'm telling you, earlier I started recording this video and the freaking ice cream man came by. Yeah. And now she's telling me to write my pre-proposal. So I'm just a mess today. She said proposition, but it's pre-proposal. Which is an assignment I have to do tonight. Whatever. Anyway. But they had this connection that they weren't going to like look more into because they knew there was a time limit. But then neither one of them wanted to end. And it's just wonderful. It's hard to explain, but it felt like it should have been a Brown Sisters book. It felt like, I forget Danny's book. Screw Danny's book. This is like the third Brown Sisters book in my heart. Because she just feels like she fits in with them. And I could just imagine those characters showing up. And even though she's not British, but I mean, he's Scottish, so, you know, it makes sense. I just loved it. And I would highly recommend. There's great, like, body diversity. We have racial diversity. You've got the pegging scene, which I think it's so important, too, to talk about, like, toxic masculinity and fragile masculinity. And, like, that's something that he's not afraid to ask for because that's something that he wants. And I, like, go Mason. That's all I have to say about that. Go Mason. Okay, so that's book 1. Loved it. 5 stars. Flawless. Then I read Seduced by Darkness, which is the novella sequel to Promise of Darkness by Beck McMaster. I'm struggling with this series. My friend Kat recommended it to me. I really liked the first book. The first 50 pages of the first book, hard to read. But then it was super interesting. The twists were pretty obvious, but I didn't mind that. This book was painful, and the reason why is because at the end of that first book, well, towards the end of that first book, things are revealed about, oh gosh, what in the heck are even their names? Thiago and V. So this book is about how V and Thiago met for the first time. And you think when you're reading the first book that they are meeting for the first time, but you have these hints and things that maybe something else happened prior. And I really do not want to ruin this for anybody, because I even though it's not hard to call, I still think it was an interesting choice story-wise. So I will say that this is their origins of their love story. It is technically a prequel. It is a novella, but it was painful because you know how it ends. Based on the events of the first book, you know how this story has to end, even if there are happy parts in the middle. And you know that even though this thing will be resolved, at the end of the first book, we've already seen it resolved. We also know how it ended and how heartbreaking it was. So to have it end there was just kind of gut-wrenching. I think it was done pretty well in terms of the storytelling. It was a longer novella, and I did enjoy more of the world building. But man, some of these characters are so unlikable. So unlikable. You also get more time spent with Thiago's squad. And it's like his little band of brothers and, sisters and everyone. His little merry band of misfits. Very Reese from, of course, A Court of Thorns and Roses. And it is a good book series. I have not felt like I had the mental capacity this month to read books 3 and 4. So that is something on the horizon for sure. But if you really enjoy A Curse of Dark and... Oh, gosh. Not A Curse of Dark and Lonely, although that's a great book. A Court of Thorns and Roses, the ACOTAR vibes. This has it. I really like it. It's not engaging me as much as I want, but I do not think that's the fault of the book. I'm fairly certain that's just me. So, there's that. So that was my second book. My third book was also a 5-star read. I gave it 4 stars to Seduced by Darkness. I read The Hating Game. I wanted to read it when I saw that it was on my Hoopla for my audio. And this book, I know people talked about it a ton when it came out. I know there's a movie. I'm kind of wary of watching the movie. I've talked to people who really enjoyed it. But what I loved about this book was it was atypical to a lot of the kind of rom-com books I've read. And in that it's about Josh and Lucy. Josh and Lucy. And actually, when I finished this book, it was 11:40 at night. And the only thing I wrote was, this book has ruined me. More later, when I can find my heart and my brain and string words together. So it is a book that is not about will they, won't they. It is not will they, won't they. It is when will they. Which, again, a lot of romance books are set up like that. But there kind of is more back and forth, a little more up in the air. This book, it's revealed very early on that, or at least made clear to, I think, us as readers very early on, that this isn't going to be a book where we're kept in the dark about, whether or not they're going to get together. But we know they are, beyond a shadow of a doubt. That these two people who are executive assistants basically for these two CEOs for two different book publishing companies that share the same office, and they sit across from each other and they play all these games. That and they've known each other for like a year or so, and they didn't get off on the right foot. And that's kind of like the setup for the story. You know they're going to get together. And you see how they feel about each other, even though it's just from Lucy's point of view. What the fun is watching them figure it out, especially Lucy, because Josh knows. He knows, and as you go throughout the book, you realize he really does. And he's been playing a game on his own too. You know, trying to win Lucy over because he failed utterly when they met. And now he's trying to make up for lost time. And it's just, you know, they're both going for the same promotion. Lucy is convinced they hate each other. But, you know, love is also very close emotion to hate. And I loved this book. I read it just after a friend of mine suggested it. And it just felt like the right time. And the audiobook was fantastic. The narrator does a wonderful job doing both characters. Doesn't try too hard on Josh's. And then I had another friend read it, and she's like, her kind of opinion was, once she accepted it for what it was, which was, you know, this book that was about them figuring it out and not us figuring it out, she was okay with it. But it took her a minute to make that realization and to understand that. But I just really cannot say enough good things about it. It reinvigorated romantic comedies for me. I've listened to a lot of realistic fiction in the last couple months, and I think it's because it's all my brain can digest. And not that I mean that realistic fiction is like dumbed down or easier to understand than other things, but I have just been struggling so much with taking in information the past month. And I think that that's going to be a theme. It's going to be a theme throughout probably through December. So I'm a little worried. I have a December thing planned. It's going to be a bingo challenge. I'm kind of wondering if I should do it in January instead, just because my life is going to be a little easier then. And I just booked a trip in December. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to play around with that idea. I hit my reading goal for the year, which is great, but I have 20 more books to read before I hit my real reading goal. I read 130 books, but my real goal is kind of 150. So, and again, I've kind of explained my rules to you before, but I have like very specific guidelines on what I count and what I don't count. And so, but I've read less like poetry collections and manga recently, and that will help with the count too, for sure. So, The Hating Game, so good. Then I read volume 2 of Wires and Nerve. It's called Gone Rogue. It's the second volume in a 2-book series called Wires and Nerve that is a spin-off series from the Lunar Chronicles, which is a YA fantasy sci-fi series that I read this spring and summer. I didn't care for these too much. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. I wish I'd read it in order. I thought I had. But I ended up reading Stars Above, which is the last novella collection, before. But I think this story comes before Stars Above, and I wish I hadn't done that. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't even know there were graphic novels. So this was fine. If you are a fan of the Lunar Chronicles and Marissa Meyer, you might check this out. I'm going to put it in my library at school, both volumes 1 and 2. But it kind of, what I loved about the Lunar Chronicles kind of got scrubbed away over reading this. And it had just been a long time since I had finished those books. And also, there are things that happen in those books that I am not a fan of. Certain things regarding certain characters and maybe unfortunate, irreversible alterations to their bodies that they were not like necessarily thrilled about. And you see that on display visually in this graphic novel, and it was a lot just to see it. And then, because I was trying to rewrite it in my head, you can't rewrite it in your head if, like, you keep seeing it. So it was fine, but, like, I didn't really do anything for me. Then I listened to a lot of stuff. Like, literally most of these are listens, as you can tell. I listened to The Paid Bridesmaid by Soraya Wilson. I'll just tell you right now, don't even waste your time. I feel bad saying that because literally in a video last month, I recommended for like a starter romance to read The Seat Filler by Soraya Wilson. But maybe that's just, I don't know. I think I liked the specific story setup of that one better. This girl, she has a crush on the celebrity. She pretends she doesn't know him. It should be annoying, but I didn't find it that annoying. He's an Adam Driver type character. I loved him. And then, she has this whole kind of kiss phobia thing, which I think is interesting, honestly. These characters, not interesting at all. I don't even remember their names. So we have our main female character. She is a, let's see, what is she? She has this business where she is a paid bridesmaid. So she can also do event coordination and stuff, but she hires all these women who are trying to turn their lives around and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, it should have been interesting, but she meets the best man. The bride is trying to set her up with the best man. She has a rule. The main character has a rule where she's not going to ever, get involved with anyone that she works with or anyone at weddings. And then she has this excuse as to why, which you find out it's based on an experience that she had in a previous working environment. I'm not saying that the experience isn't valid, but it was kind of dumb. So I was like, okay, crazy. And they didn't have any chemistry. It was one of those books where they were like, hey, I feel this thing. And I was like, well, I don't feel it. I should feel it. I don't feel anything. When you're in the same room and you're telling me oh gosh, there's sparks, I'm like, okay. Anyway, it just wasn't very good. So I gave it 3 stars. I just am not a fan. Then I listened to Crimes of Passion, which is an Audible original. It's fairly short. It's by Jack Harbin, and it has a full cast performance. I liked this. This is about 2 podcasters, both of whom they're both Black content creators. They both have kind of crime podcasts. One is more kind of social justice related. One is more kind of understanding the minds of killers. And it's fascinating. I liked the podcast element. It felt way too simplistic. It felt like I was missing out on a lot. And if I'm reading a novella and it feels complete, fine. But if I'm reading a novella and it feels like there should be more, it shouldn't be a novella. And I don't even know if we can call this a novella. I think we would call it a novella. I mean, probably shorter than that even. But it's just I don't know. I really liked it. I liked that there was diversity in there. I liked that it was a gay romance. I liked the podcasting element. I thought that was really cool. But man, there are so many missed opportunities in this. They will start talking in a podcast and then it'll fade out. And I was like, no, let's listen to the whole podcast episode. How cool would that have been, right? It's listen to the whole podcast episode. So yeah, missed opportunities. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. It was cute, but I don't know. It didn't really do it for me. And then the last book that I finished before I talk about the ones I'm currently reading, because I'm going to just hint at those. I am rereading, I did reread The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which I actually have over there, but I'm not even going to pick it up. I'll just stick it right here. But I was rereading it because for my August TBR for the Life on the Edge challenge, I had put for book by an Asian author, The Bride Test, because that's the second book in the series. And it had been 3 years since I had read The Kiss Quotient, and that was really when I discovered kind of romance, the contemporary romances. I knew about them, but that was kind of the new, in my mind, in my experience, kind of the new wave. And I ended up amending my rating to 4 stars. And I haven't actually left a rating for that or a review for that yet. It's still really good. I still love, it's about Stella. She has, I forget if we I think she says she has Asperger's. Or do we just say that she has an autism spectrum disorder? Regardless, I mean, similar. Not to like oversimplify, but, obviously connected. She says autism, so I guess we can just say that. And it's interesting, but it develops much too quickly. It actually felt to me more like a novella because there were, it's about Stella who hires Michael he's an escort. And she hires him for basically like sex ed because she's had sex with people before, but it's never been something that she's enjoyed and she thinks she's doing it wrong. But Michael discovers pretty quickly, he has a cousin who has autism as well, and he assumes, he makes some assumptions about her, which I think it was valid. And so he kind of uses his experience with his cousin to kind of give him insight into her and in terms of intimacy and dating before they even have any physical intimacy, which is really great. And he is escorting because he is paying off all these hospital bills for his mother after her bank account was emptied and his father ran off. And his family is, his mother's Vietnamese, his dad was white. And he's like, he's used to being like praised for his looks. Not that he enjoys that, but he kind of getting back at his dad, selling his body, to make the money. And so he finds like some sort of like sick satisfaction in that. But they fall for each other pretty quickly. And instead of talking about it openly, they don't. And which was frustrating. It was resolved kind of too quickly after that. And there were whole sections of the book where she'd be like, it had been 1 week that they've been living together because they do a fake relationship. And I'm like, where was that 1 week? Like, let's see it, And I just felt like it. I loved it the first time, and it was very, very enjoyable the second time, and maybe I'm more critical now. But it felt like I was missing stuff. So it was good. I'm now listening to The Bride Test, which I have heard mixed reviews about. I have a friend who's basically asked me to read it and tell her about it so she can actually read Kwan's book, the third book of The Heart Principle. So I'm not disliking The Bride Test. We'll see how that goes. You'll obviously hear about it next month when I do my wrap up because I just started it 2 days ago. So I will not be finishing it before this month is over since I'm already recording this wrap up. Then a book that's been taking me, I've been working on this book for 2/3 of the month. It is Duel with the Vampire Lord by Elise Kova. And I've got her Married to Magic books back here, Duel with the Elf King, and then Dance with the Fae Prince. And I've been really looking forward to this third book in the series, and then there's a fourth coming next year. This book is a chonker. Like, it's, I think, bigger than both those books combined. And I don't know if that's necessary. And I'm really struggling with the main character because the premise of the book is basically you have this, I think it's called Hunter's Hamlet, and all these people training their whole lives to protect this town against vampires. And she is the Forge Maiden, trained by her mother. And so she helps make all the weapons, but she's not a hunter. And every 500 years on the blood moon or whatever, the vampire lord comes with his horde. And so she's convinced that vampires are horrible monsters, mindless. And on the night of the blood moon, she feels compelled to go and find her brother. And before her brother left, she's been training with him sort of off the books. She's not supposed to be receiving that training. Her brother left this vial that the hunters use when they need it. And it's, we don't even know what's in it really. But it gives them the heightened sensibilities and abilities of the vampires. And so she goes and is killing vampires, and she goes to find her brother because she's convinced that he is dead. And he is bleeding out, and the main hunter guy is dead, and then the vampire lord is there and ends up taking her with him. And it's kind of like there's a curse on the vampires. The vampire, because she says it wrong, are convinced that it's the humans' fault, that they have put this curse on them. And not to spoil, it's obvious she's wrong. Like, it's obvious she's wrong. How much of that is her being purposely lied to by the circumstances she was in growing up in Hunter's Hamlet? Because we don't know yet, kind of what that secret situation looks like. Or if this, it's been lost to time and it really is just an accident, that no one's fixed this curse yet. But also it's staring her in the face in every scene. And I am almost 30% of the way through. I haven't read it. I keep reading it every 2 or 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And I'm hoping to get to it more this weekend. And maybe I might finish it by the end of the month. I don't think I will. Probably very early in October I'll finish it. But it is just, annoying. And I feel bad saying that because I always feel bad criticizing female characters. Because, yay, feminism, woo, exciting. Female main characters, let's go, like, kick ass. But stop being fucking annoying, Like, it's the reason why I never finished the Cruel Prince series. By Holly Black. I fucking hated Jude. She drove me nuts. And I don't know if I can finish that series. And I was talking to a kid the other day about it. And she goes, God, she's driving me crazy. And I was like, thank God. You're the only person I've ever talked to who said that. So, in this character, her ignorance is really just pissing me off. And she better catch on soon, because this book is hella long. And I'm feeling like it's because of this situation. And it could probably easily have been 100 pages shorter. Now, will I think differently the next month? Maybe. But that's kind of where I'm at. So, those are the 2 books I'm in progress. I've read 7 full ones. I haven't done a whole lot else. I've been reading some webtoons. I could probably update you on that, actually. On the ones that I haven't said I've finished yet. Because I have a feeling that one of them is coming to an end soon. Let's see here. So I've been reading one called Punch Drunk Love, which I'm not sure when this is going to end, but it's about this guy who has a crush on his boss. And I read, the webtoons I read are on Lezen Comics, just FYI. I sometimes use other sites, but that's kind of what I've been, and right now I just have like 3 or 4 that I'm reading, and then I'm waiting for those to finish before I start anything new. But it's about this guy who, kind of unbeknownst to him, accidentally, like, not blackmails his boss into like starting a physical relationship with him. His boss thinks he's blackmailing him, but really he's just saying that he likes him, and it's like a huge misunderstanding. And then the boss is like, gosh, why isn't he like I'm treating him terribly? Like, why isn't he leaving? And the other guy's like, I love it. Oh my God, he's giving me attention. And you're just like, oh, this is ridiculous. So it's cute. It's cute. I'm really enjoying it. I'm having a good time. So that's where I'm at. I'm optimistic about next month. I'll be recording that video soon. I'm really trying to think about what I want to read and why I want to read it. And do I even set a TBR? I don't know. I've got some plans coming soon too. Like I said, a bingo board, hopefully December, but we'll kind of see if that comes to fruition. And then I also want to start a new series soon. But it's been really crazy and really hard this past month. Shockingly difficult. And I don't like the kind of person I become when I'm this busy. So yeah. But still 2 videos a week. There was one week where I thought I'd scheduled a video and I hadn't, and I was so busy that I didn't even have time to check until 3 days later. That's how busy I am. I just schedule the videos and hope they go out. So it didn't end up going out because it was scheduled for the wrong day. And so that's fine. That video, that week, there's only one video, but I feel pretty proud of, being able to like produce this content. I know it's flawed. You know, I'm flawed. So it makes sense. But that's it. And I hope that your reading in September went better than mine. I know 7 books seems like maybe even a lot to some people. It seems like, 3-4 years ago, it would have seemed like a lot to me. But, I'm usually reading, I would say about 10 books a month, and it just feels like a little disappointing, but I'm hopeful for October and November especially. No, October, November, I've got some plans, and I'm excited. So that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.